Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 311. Today we're going to take a look at Sons of Anarchy, Men of Mayhem. This is a new game from Gale Force 9, plays 3 to 4 players, and the box is 90 minutes, that's probably right. This is a game that is based on a TV show, Sons of Anarchy, if you're not familiar with it. It's currently in its final season as I record this video. I used to be a fan of the show, not really a big fan of the show. I may catch up and watch the last season, we'll see. But we're not here to talk about the TV show, we're here to talk about the game. Now, I've already gone through an exhaustive rules explanation in my previous video about Sons of Anarchy. Since then, I've had an opportunity to play it a few more times and further crystallize my thoughts on the game. Each player is going to get their own motorcycle club. It could be Sam Crow, which is kind of the main character or the main club in the show. It could be the Mayans, the Lynn Syndicate, or even the One-Niners. Each club has their own player board, and you have a basic side and an advanced side shown here. This is going to tell you how much starting money, how many full members and prospect members you start with, how many drugs or guns you're going to start with, as well as the level of heat. Now, the object of the game is to get the most money. A game is played over 6 rounds. In each round, basically what you're going to be doing is driving and sending your motorcycle gang members to different locations on the board, collecting money, selling guns, selling contraband, and also having shootouts with the opposing gangs. Each round, players are going to acquire a certain number of order tokens. This is always going to be their base orders that's shown on their player board, plus the number of full members. Now, full members are those that are riding motorcycles. Prospect members are not quite full members. Those are the ones you can see kind of standing pathetically on their own. Players can do a variety of things. They can move dudes from one location to another. That's simply spend the order token, move the dudes. You can exploit a location. Now, when you exploit a location, you simply spend an order token, put it on the Anarchy symbol on the location, and then do whatever the location says. We can see this location here gives us a choice. You can either sell a gun for $3 or you can spend $1 to get a contraband, and there's a maximum number of times you could do that. Now, you can exploit a location if there are gang members from another gang at that location. There can be only your gang members at the location for you to exploit it, which leads us to the next action, which is to have a throwdown. Now, throwdowns are very simple. You declare your throwdown, you have to spend one of your action tokens, and then starting with the patch holder and going clockwise around the table, each player involved in the shootout is going to have the opportunity to spend one of their action tokens to bring reinforcements. The full members contributes 2 power to the combat. Each of the prospects contributes 1. That's going to give Sam Crow a total of 6, and the Mayans have a total of 5. Now, each player is going to take guns from behind their screen, put them in the closed fist, and then reveal them. Each gun is going to add +3 to the combat. Finally, each player is going to roll the matching die. Whoever has the highest total is going to win, and then the loser must vacate the premises and send all of their members back to their home location. However, each gun submitted is going to send an opposing gang member to the emergency room. Also, anytime that you submit a gun, you're going to increase heat, which is going to be bad for you. And I can't oversell enough how great the heat mechanic is in this. At the end of each round, you're going to actually take in your hand and submit a certain number of contraband to a black market sale. So anytime you submit a contraband, you're also going to get a heat. Now, it's not the number of guns in a battle or the number of contraband that you submit at the end of the round that's going to increase the heat. Just if you submit 1 or 10, it's going to add 1 heat. But as the game progresses and rounds move on, you're going to be very cognizant about how much heat you're incurring, because every time that you take a heat over the limit, you're going to have to remove one of your full members and put them back into the general supply. You can recruit prospects and then upgrade those to full members. And finally, you can even pass submitting an action token and then kind of seeing what everybody else is going to do. Now, when you go over your maximum heat, you're also going to reset that heat right back down to 1. So there'll be some occasions where you may sort of sacrifice one of your members to sort of reboot, allow yourself to contribute more contraband and contribute more guns to future fights, which may be more important than where you currently stand. And that's a lot of the dynamics that's going to happen with this game. It's going to be very much player driven, very much kind of, economically driven decisions are going to be made. You're going to engage in certain combat, contest certain locations because you think, okay, if, for example, Sam Crow gets a little bit more of a boost when they sell guns. So you don't want them really acquiring guns. You don't want them selling guns, obviously. So you're going to try to negotiate with other players at the table to try to prevent them from kind of exploiting their special ability. And each gang has its own special abilities. Some of them are related to combat, some are related to, you know, selling guns or trading guns for drugs and things. So a lot of that sort of cognizance is going to happen around the players, and players are going to need to kind of know what locations are, you know, more beneficial for certain types of gangs. You know, watching how much money people are going to be putting behind their screen. So, you know, attacking the leader, you know, trying to negotiate and say, oh, I don't really have that much money, you know. So there's a lot of that's going to happen, and that's very much into the theme of the show, or into sort of like being in a gang, is, you know, throwing the heat elsewhere, you know, physically in terms of the mechanics, and also kind of, you know, metaphorically in negotiation with the other players. There's going to be a lot of variety and diversity in the different locations because you don't use anywhere close to all the locations in the game. There's also a deck of Anarchy cards that can sometimes act as locations. It can also act as little obstacles and other types of things that will either help or hinder the whole group. Now, there are some opportunities that, you know, you can attack the other players with directly, but again, those act as locations. So if I have some guys there and then you move a guy over there, I can't do it until it's free of any other members of other gangs. Now, that's something you can do very simply, is just move like a prospect over somewhere, and then that prevents somebody from doing the action on their next turn, and they've got to engage with combat with you, so you can maybe negotiate a little bit so that you don't move a guy over there, and a lot of good stuff like that. And as you move along, more areas going to open up, more options are going to open up, more cards are going to be revealed. So the game is going to start off pretty tight, and so you can have a lot of combat in the first round possibly, but then you get a little bit more room to maneuver as the game develops. And that's pretty much how you play the game. Now, as I said earlier, I did a more exhaustive rules walkthrough in my previous video, but the game at its heart is very simple. You have a couple of actions that you can do. You know, you move guys around, you exploit the location to do the action, you get in people's way, you try to, you know, fight people off that get in your way. But at its heart, it's almost like a hybrid in some ways, because really it's area control, you know, has a little bit of sort of, I guess, worker placement, move guys here to do the action. But it's almost like a dudes on the map game as well, because you're just, you know, you're trying to control territory, have combat, you know, submit your guns and roll dice and fight it off. So in a lot of ways, it feels like a Euro Ameritrash hybrid with a very, very serious and kind of overwhelming theme in a lot of ways. Now, there's prostitution, contraband is short for drugs, so there's all that kind of stuff. So it's not a family game for sure, but it's a very, very fun game. There's a lot of great dynamics here. I mentioned the heat and sort of trying to control that. There are locations that will allow you to drop heat and different things that you can do in that regard. The guns is a very interesting part because, like I said, you can sell guns for money, and the most money wins. So, you know, do I sell a bunch of guns and get a bunch of money? Do I keep them to, you know, have a battle later on? And so that by winning that battle, it's going to have a nicer location available to me that I can exploit to get more contraband. Because at the end of the game, at the end of the round, you submit contraband to the black market, and then you get a certain amount of money. Now, based on what the contraband black market card says, you're going to get a certain amount of money per contraband committed. So if all the players together submit 6 contraband in this case, each player is going to get $2 a piece. Now that I've played this a couple of times, this isn't quite as gamey as I first felt it was, but you can still kind of do a little bit of tricks with it. You maybe sit out around and not contribute any contraband, especially if you're close to the heat, or your heat's gone up a little bit and you can't contribute that much anyway. So you can get a bunch more contraband, maybe spend some time lowering your heat, let everybody else kind of submit a bunch, and, you know, submit to a diluted market, and then you come in a little bit later and try to control those areas where contraband is going to be generated. So there is some gamesmanship there. The game has a nice sort of story arc that happens. You know, you reveal more locations, you reveal more cards every round. Players are going to upgrade their gang members. You recruit prospects and upgrade those prospects into gang members. And once you have a bunch of members and you get a lot more actions, you're able to do a lot more stuff and kind of put all your eggs and not all just in one basket. And it gives you an opportunity to be very weaselly. And the one thing that really is going to, I think, sell the game, or it should, is there isn't really any good gangster games, you know, board games. There are, like, you know, mafia games, but they're all caricatures and, you know, cartoonish and all that kind of cool stuff. There's no real gritty and dirty, you know, nasty sort of, you know, almost realistic. I mean, it's a TV show, so it's not really that realistic, but it feels like very modern and gritty gang game. You know, you're selling guns, you're selling drugs, you're dealing all kinds of illicit stuff, and that's something that hasn't really existed. I think, you know, it's got a nice theme, so it's got the, you know, theme that folks that like the show can get into, the familiar characters, and, you know, if you've watched the show, some of the different special abilities and things, and some of the Anarchy cards are going to make sense. They kind of go with some of the different episodes of the show, but it's going to fit that market. I don't know how big of a market that is for a real, you know, brutal and gritty gang game, but it's there, and so I think it really excels at that, and that's something, you know, that I've always kind of wanted, because you kind of, you know, movies and stuff, they kind of fantasize and glamorize and all this stuff, and it's a horrible lifestyle, but you know, once in a while it's good to watch Scarface, right? So so this kind of hits that same mark. It's kind of like the Scarface of board games, if you will. You get to be very, you know, mean and nasty, backstabby, front stabby, all kinds of good stuff. So anyway, that's Sons of Anarchy. Thanks.